Welcome back to the American Experiment Podcast. My name is Grace Keating. Today, I am not joined by Catherine Hinderocker, but instead I'm joined by producer Isaac. Welcome to the podcast, Isaac.
Thank you. It always surprises me how bright the lights are on this side of the camera.
Yeah,
It's very nice.
A little trial by fire.
Yes,
yeah, long requested, apparently. We've had a lot of requests to get you on this side of the camera.
Yeah,
so,
mostly by my burner accounts. Mostly by my own emails.
That's all you commenting on our videos.
Get producer Isaac out here. Yeah, that's me.
Well, we're very happy to accommodate those real and not real requests today. Stick around. In the second half of this episode, Bill Walsh and I sit down and interview Senator Mark Johnson to ask the questions that I think every Minnesotan is wondering right now. What the heck is going on at the legislature? Seems like not a lot. So we'll get you those answers in the second half of today's episode.
For sure. Yeah, he does a great job of just kind of letting us in behind the scenes, pulling back the curtain. Just if you're looking for an inside scoop on what is going on at the Capitol, this is it. I mean, it's a perfect interview for it.
Yeah. So, we've got a bit of a news roundup for you guys today. But first, Isaac, our resident Minnesota sports expert. Let's give me an update. What's going on?
So
I don't tune in at all. So
unfortunately, I was at the Timberwolves game last night.
That is unfortunate.
It was unfortunate. Heartbreaking loss. So the Wolves go down 1-3 in the series. It's best of 7, so it's first to 4.
Okay.
First to 4 games wins.
Oh.
And Oklahoma City has won 3 games.
Okay.
And the Wolves have only won 1.
Oh.
So it'd be very hard for them to come back from that deficit.
So they're still in it, but
they're still in it.
Our odds are dropping.
They play
right
tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yep. The only way we could win the series and advance to the finals is if we win 3 games in a row. And that would be very tough against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh.
So it was a tough game last night. The refs screwed us over.
Oh.
It's awful. If my voice is a little raspy, it's because I was yelling quite a bit.
You were throwing things at the refs.
Correct. Way up from the high 200s, row W. You know, it's a long way down, but
a lot of anger there.
A lot of anger coming from that section. So,
well, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Is that our only sports update? Wow,
that's our only sports update. The Wild are out of it. The Twins are playing well, which is good.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Go Twins. Go Twins. But they have a long way to go.
Oh.
So they still have like 120 games left in their season.
Holy cow. Okay, we'll check back in.
Yeah, we'll check back in. We got plenty of time.
Later in the season.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit today about the 5-year anniversary of the George Floyd death and riots. So May 25th, over the weekend, was the 5-year anniversary. Isaac, just thinking back, what was your experience like of that weekend?
It's crazy that it was 5 years ago already. It seems like it was just like last year.
Yeah.
I just remember the chaos. I remember being so confused by the chaos of it all.
Yeah.
Of like, this has never happened before. It's never been this like free for all.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happening right down the street was just insane.
Yeah, the video footage was so striking. It was totally that feeling of utter lawlessness.
Yeah.
There was, I think that was maybe the most striking element of it for me, was sitting there living at the time in Minneapolis and feeling so helpless. Like, people are calling 911, no one's coming, buildings are burning, no one's coming. That was something that I think Minnesotans are going to remember for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and just Minneapolis at the center of international news for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I think everyone associates this event with, when you say like, oh, I'm from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Some part of their mind goes to this event.
No, that's so true. Another great mark on our state's history.
Wonderful.
Really earning that recognition. So Bill Glahn, every year for the past few years, has actually gone down to George Floyd Square and driven around and filmed and posted it online. And he's been in 2025, 24, 23, 22. And the footage is basically identical. I'm sure you've seen the video.
Yeah, it's the exact same.
Yeah.
You can tell like every building is the exact same.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why it feels like it was not that long ago, because
that's so
this
true.
Part of the city is just frozen in time.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, I think that's why, because he's going to go down there next year and it's going to be the exact same.
Right. It seems like one of the only real changes that he noticed, and if you guys want to watch that footage, it's on our YouTube page, was he visited the, burned out 3rd Precinct building that had been totally destroyed. And now there's a sign hanging that says this is the future home of the Minneapolis Democracy Center. So that's good. They're going to work on early voting and voter outreach. And my gosh, if that is not just emblematic of Minneapolis, the state of that city in general, they burn down law and order, burn down the people protecting them. And they say, but go vote for the people who allowed this to happen. We're going to make it even easier for you guys to do this.
So true. And then in their statement, according to the city, the last sentence in the statement is, we are planning a new use for this space. And so part of it's like,
planning?
We don't even
5 years.
We don't even know what we're doing with it yet, but we're going to call it the Democracy Center.
We know that. We've got the name down.
We're not sure what Democracy Center means. We're not sure what it does. You'll be able to vote early, but the other 3.5 years, we're not really sure what we're going to do with it. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. In other news, this is again from Bill Glahn. Another Minnesota nonprofit was searched by the FBI last Thursday in connection with the sprawling Feeding Our Future fraud case. Now, so far, no one really has been accused of any wrongdoing. I don't think any charges have been filed, but this is very reminiscent of the FBI raids that happened in, what was that, January 2022 on Feeding Our Future that kind of kicked off that whole $250 million fiasco.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary part is no one really knows what, as Bill Glahn puts it, is behind the blue door in St. Paul.
Right.
No one really knows how deep it goes, if it's just, the FBI kind of covering its bases, making sure everything's on par. Mm-hmm. Or if it's another Feeding Our Future instance.
Right. So the nonprofit is called New Vision Foundation. They're not normally, I guess, a free food nonprofit, but during COVID, they took in, I think it was $2.7 million in free food money from the federal government, distributed by MDE. They operated 2 food sites, and they claimed to serve more than 1 million meals to children at its St. Paul site, just one of the 2 sites, in 2021.
That's a lot of St. Paul children.
That's a lot of meals. A lot of St. Paul
I'm
children.
no population expert, but that seems like more children than St. Paul has.
And they're still, this is what's so frustrating too, is they're still getting money. So that was the federal COVID funds, that was the $2.7 million. But they've also gotten almost $300,000 in grants from the state Department of Employment and Economic Development, that's DEED, between 2020 and 2023. And then just a couple months ago, on March 10th, 2025, there was a press release put out showing that this nonprofit is getting another $500,000 from DEED, the Minnesota State Agency. So the money is still flowing. And I think what's so frustrating about this is, we just watched a clip, maybe last week, of House DFL members saying, we've been on the fraud case from the beginning. We've been working on this the last few years. This isn't new to us. And then boom, more FBI raids. And these are the same people who just voted against the Office of Inspector General to investigate fraud.
Crazy.
These are people who have been in charge this entire time.
Crazy. Say the essence of saying one thing, doing another.
Yeah.
It just seems like the FBI these days is getting its leads from anything the legislature funds, any nonprofit the legislature funds. Yeah. So they're, the legislature funds a nonprofit, and the FBI goes, well, we should probably check them out. Just look it out, just in case, so. Crazy.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Yeah. We'll see what comes of it. It sounds like they were looking for specifically evidence of wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. So this is obviously a developing story. Bill Glahn, I'm sure, will be writing about it every day at AmericanExperiment.org, so be sure to check that out. Moving on, I think we have time for this story. One of our favorite phrases here at American Experiment, I would say, is the fully fund education phrase. Isaac,
yes.
have you heard that before?
Yes, you seem to hear it everywhere where this gets tossed around. Everyone seems to be on message.
Yes. Minnesotans in general really think that their schools are not being funded enough. Mm-hmm. Teachers need higher salaries. Kids need more money, or they're not going to be able to focus and eat food in school or something like that.
Right, of course. Yep.
It's just one of those cases where reality does not meet your perception. There's such a disconnect there. And that's finally, it seems like, is being recognized a little bit at the federal level. They just put out new national polling showing that in general, U.S. adults greatly underestimate how much they think their public schools spend on average per student. Here in Minnesota, we spend around $16,000 on average per student, and people vastly underestimate that. And that's kind of what we talk about when we look into this, Bill Walsh's circle of education funding.
People who say we need to fund schools more, people who say we need to fund schools less, almost everyone across the board has no true idea that we spend $16,000 plus on every student in the state of Minnesota. And for what? I mean, it's not coming through in the test scores.
Right. Yeah. When 50% of your kids can't read or do math at grade level. I mean, clearly, and this is what Katrin Wigfall has written about so much on our website, money does not equal results, and more money does not equal better results. I mean, she has dug into all of the spending levels, all of the test scores across the country. There's simply no correlation between how much you spend and the achievement outcomes that you get.
None. In fact, 3 of the top 7 states in this NAEP test scores spend less than Minnesota by like a significant margin. And their scores are much higher than Minnesota's. I mean, even looking at Wisconsin, they spend $100 less per student, so $16,800 per student, and they ranked 18th in NAEP, and we're 29th.
And
that's just next door.
Right. And until Minnesotans wake up and realize we are fully funding education, and it's not getting us the results. And of course, it's all about how that money is spent, because right now, so much of it is going to admin costs, and it's not going to the areas it needs to be.
Totally. Yeah. The admin bloat in Minnesota is just wildly out of hand.
Our last story for today, I did want to end on a bit of a high note.
Yes.
It's kind of a convoluted story, but the bottom line is that Minnesotans are finally free from the ridiculous California EV mandate. And so the U.S. Senate voted just last week to overturn, and this is where it gets so convoluted, they're overturning the Biden administration's approval of California's Clean Air Act waiver. And all that means is the Biden administration gave California permission to set more stringent, stricter regulations on vehicle emissions than the federal regulations. They got this waiver. And other states were allowed to opt into following California's stricter regulations. And of course, Minnesota was one of those states that opted into that, which is such a slippery slope.
Totally. It's the essence of, when your mom used to say, like, oh, if your friend would jump off a cliff, would you follow him? Like, Walz was not only following Governor Newsom, he was like on his tail.
He was ready to go off
He was
that
telling
cliff.
him, like, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's just nuts that the Senate had to step in and be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And I'm sure it sounds like there's going to be, legal challenges from California pushing back. But the bottom line is, for now, Minnesota is safe because under these regulations that we adopted, the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles was going to be completely banned by 2035. So 10 years from now, no more internal combustion engine vehicles, which is, I think, what I drive, what most people drive. It's not an EV. It's not hybrid.
Madness.
It's just insane.
Just not practical.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And I think Sarah Montalbano has written about this hundreds of times of like, look reality in the face. This is not possible.
Yeah. And it seemed like those economic realities that finally got people to wake up and say, we can't do this. People from the car industry were saying, we're going to produce fewer cars. Prices are going to go up. We're already laying off workers in anticipation of these, because it was like a staggered rollout. So they were already having to produce more EVs over time. And they were already letting workers go because of that, because there's just not the demand for it. People aren't buying them.
Totally.
And you can't force that.
Totally. And that's one of my favorite parts of the story that's kind of underlined in here is that Sarah Montalbano writes that the cost per vehicle would raise about $2,500. And so I just did a quick search before this and it's all over the internet, of Governor Walz being out there on MSNBC, wherever, just going off about how Trump's tariffs will raise prices for Minnesotans, how will raise price, your car price will go up. Well, if we're so concerned about the car prices here, look in the mirror, because this is number one. And this was in 2021, long before any tariffs, Trump was even in the White House.
Yeah.
Before Trump's mugshot even. And he was jacking up car prices on Minnesotans.
Yeah.
And so now he's out there because Trump is trying a new tariff policy. He's going, oh, well, we can't raise, that's going to raise prices. Yeah. How can we afford
Suddenly
this?
He's a fiscal conservative. It's like, oh, okay.
Suddenly we're so concerned about that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And setting aside, too, the financial hardships that it would put on average Minnesotans who want to buy a car, we have handed over our governance, our governing authority, to another state. If California made any changes to their regulations, Minnesota wouldn't have a choice on whether or not to adopt those because we handed over our control to California, their regulatory board. That as a concept is so scary to me. Like
So
I live in
crazy.
Minnesota. I want to elect people that I trust to make decisions for me and my family and the people around me. I don't live in California because California is insane. So don't bring their policies here.
Yes, if I wanted California's policies, I would just move there.
Exactly.
And
That's
neither
exactly
one of
it.
us have ever cast the ballot for any California politician.
Yeah.
But here we are under their rule.
Yeah. It's just absurd. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for joining the pod this week.
Thank you for having me. Catherine, feel free to stay away as long as possible. Just kidding.
We are going to kick things over now to our interview with Senator Mark Johnson. We'll see you guys. American Experiment is supported by thousands of individuals like you. To join the movement, go to www.americanexperiment.org and click the yellow donate button. From all of us here, thank you. Welcome back, guys. Senator Mark Johnson, thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Well, I am dying, as I think most of our listeners are, to hear kind of an inside look at what's going on at the legislature, but I will resist for a few more minutes. Will you tell us first a little bit about yourself, your background? I think there's one point on your resume that Bill will find especially interesting.
Well, I can't imagine what that would be, but we'll go through that. So born and raised up in Northwest Minnesota. So the Canadian accent is actually authentic, really close to the border up there. But yeah, so graduated from Bethel University down in St. Paul. Went to, Harvard of the North is what we really call it for law school.
Oh my
the
gosh.
number one law school in North Dakota, coincidentally. Bill, what was the name?
Sioux.
Go Sioux. Despite the Fighting Hawks current logo, it's always Sioux to most of us up
Yes.
there.
Yeah, my brother's there right now,
Is he
so
really?
I'm quite familiar with
Oh, wow.
What a
yeah,
great choice.
it's alive and well
Did
with the
Bill
current
have
students.
something to do with that, or I'm not sure.
You'd like to think so.
Yes, sure. Well, she
Well,
never heard anything bad about North Dakota, certainly.
Well,
Absolutely
that's
not.
true.
It's a great school. But so up there in East Grand Forks, so we've got a little law practice up there, and then I also do some construction work. It's a third generation construction company that we have, and then I've got three little kids. So I've got a 13-year-old boy, an 11-year-old girl, and a 9-year-old boy. And so we're up there doing that, and now we're down doing this politic thing. Been doing this for 9 years. The Senate Republican leader down here in St. Paul.
Yeah. So what? Sorry. Go
Can
ahead.
we do a quick story about the beginning of his political career?
That's what I was just going to ask about, actually. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was working for the Senate at the time, and District 1 is the Senate district that Senator Johnson represents.
The number one district.
The first
in the
district
state.
that we draw on when we do the map, it starts in the northwest corner. So District 1, there was a gentleman in that seat for many years, decades, Leroy Stumpf, and we're trying to win the majority in the 2016 election. To win majorities, you need breaks. You always need a break or two. And I was sitting at my desk one day, I think 2016, and it came across the Twitters that Senator Stumpf was going to resign. He wasn't going to run again. Now, there it is. There's the break. Because we were heavily recruiting up there trying to find somebody to run for against Senator Stumpf. It was a very popular incumbent Democrat. And when he announced he wasn't going to run, we thought, okay, we have a real shot at this. So now there's all kinds of people come forward to run for the seat because it's a really good chance to win for Republicans. So I think there are 5 or 6 candidates, and Senator David Hand, the leader at the time, were recruiting up there. And we're talking to different mayors. I think the mayor Crookston ran, and I think the mayor Rozo ran, and there's some other good candidates that ran. We're talking to Dan Fabian, the House member up there, very popular Republican, giving us guidance. And then this guy, Mark Johnson, pops up to run, and we don't know.
So I almost ruined your plan, is what you're saying.
Well, there was no
Is
plan.
that where it was?
No, that's not where I'm going with this. There was no plan. There was an endorsing convention. Local Republicans were going to meet. And we had talked to and met with a few of the people. And we were driving. I don't think we were even in the district driving. And we had a cell phone conversation in Senator Hand's car with Mark. Just, hey, nice to meet you. You're going to go to the endorsing convention. Good luck. And we all thought, I honestly thought one of these mayors would certainly win the endorsement that day, having, been in politics and everything. And then I think a few days later, we get a call from Representative Fabian saying, yeah, Mark Johnson won on the first ballot. Wasn't even close. So you surprised us. We didn't have time to meet you. We didn't have to recruit you. So whatever you did at that convention, telling them who you were, I think was like, here's who I am. Here's what I'm about. Here's what I want to do. Won the day in I think a pretty pretty good field of mayors and other candidates that had been in this game before. So I think it's an interesting story. And then of course now years later you've grown in the caucus and become the leader. So that's my backstory on Senator Johnson.
Think, Bill, you were the first one that I had talked to that was in with the caucus. I talked to some people, political folks, but they were all kind of party people. But you were the very first call that I got from anybody within the caucus. So you've been there from the very, very beginning on this whole political journey.
It was an easy campaign to run, too. Just one more side story on this. It's a good side story.
This could go on for a while.
So how many minutes do we have again?
We still do campaign schools teaching, like mostly school board candidates. And we talk about the use of photography in campaigns and some professional photography with Mark's family and kids. Some of the best photos ever taken of kids in campaigns. It won the day, and the direct mail was so good because you have such a beautiful family. And I still use those as examples. Here's good photography. Here's what it looks like. Although I will say one thing. We said, get a photo of you working because your family has this concrete business. I said that right. Concrete business, not
concrete.
Cement.
Yep.
Concrete business. He used to correct me all the time. And get a photo of you working concrete, and could not get that photo done right. So we finally sent a field staff up there to get a decent photo of you working concrete, which helped win the campaign.
Well, I think it was just hard capturing me actually working. That was the problem that you were really coming up with. No, we're out there every day. We really had a great time. You sent up some great field staff, still friends with the staff that we had up there to this day. And so this whole process of politics, I mean, we can talk about what's going down in the Capitol, but like the experience of running for office and being part of that team, and like everybody's pulling in the same direction. It's such an experience that you won't get anywhere else. And so you see people that have stepped out of the game, like Bill, you're still part of it, but the diaspora, as some people call it, but it's such a, you get these networks and almost like a family that you have. So a lot of great memories, core memories that you'll have for the rest of your life on that.
All right, we better get to business. What's going on? I mean, we're sitting here early in the week after Memorial Day. Doesn't seem like anything's happening on there. You're a leader of one of the four caucuses. Are you in the meetings? Can you just give us the main question is what the heck is going on over there in this special session progress? Yeah,
and so who would have seen this coming? When the Democrats stayed away for 23 days during the very beginning of session this year. The ties that have been going on both in the House and the Senate. This has been one of those years, we always say like, oh, this is a historic year. Clearly, this was a historic year where you've got so many dynamics that are going on right now. With, the Senate, we're only one seat away from the majority. And so this typically what you'd see is a lot more interaction between Republicans and Democrats working across the aisle. Over the last 2 years, even with that very thin majority, Democrats have literally shut us out of meetings, shut us out of conversations that should take place in a way where we're working back and forth on bills, getting things that we can get some Republicans, some Democrats to be carrying these bills across the finish line. That's not happening. And that continues to this year. And now what you're seeing are these hardcore positions on especially the left, where Republicans are trying to figure out how we get these bills done. Democrats want nothing to do with Republicans. And you can see that now with this undocumented worker issue that's going on, right? Where you have Democrats that are storming the governor's press conference because they heard that we need to make some adjustments so that there isn't this unlimited, unmitigated risk to Minnesota's balance sheet and financial outlook right now.
So break that down. So you came to an agreement. There was an agreement on we're going to phase out funding adult illegal immigrant health care for free.
Yep.
The Governor Walz insisted on keeping children somehow. I don't know how you separate, but that's details.
Sure.
But Senator Murphy, your counterpoint in the Senate, agreed. Representative Hortman, the Democrat leader in the House, agreed. Mm-hmm. Tim Walz, the Democrat governor, agreed. And then, of course, well, you didn't actually agree to that whole deal. We can talk about that in a second. No, but Speaker Demuth agreed.
Yeah.
So you had agreement. You have a press conference. What were you thinking when you saw them storm their own press conference? Essentially, their own leader agreed.
Yeah, so I mean that just demonstrates their just inflexibility within the activist group that's been elected now. I mean, you see that over and over again where, they will just take a hard line on whatever issue it is and refuse to really take into account any other opinions or ideas And here where leaders were forced to come to a compromise because Speaker Dameth has the gavel over there in the House, they've been used to not having to compromise for 2 years. They've had $19 billion of state surplus to buy off their members and figure out how they're going to do it. So the idea of a compromise with a Republican, it doesn't compute. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to do that sort of thing. So this has been a very hard year for those Democrats on the left.
Well, and now it seems like that might be changing a little bit. They might actually need to come to the table and get some Republican votes if those hardline DFL legislators really refuse to vote on this package. If they come to you and say, what do we need to do to get your votes on this? What is your guys' answer?
You hit it right on the head. So we have been trying to work really hard with Leader Murphy over in the Senate, figuring out ways that we can work together on bills in ways that are bipartisan, that won't, be a poison pill. But Leader Murphy refuses to come to us and say, hey, we need some votes. We need some help to get this done.
So that hasn't happened.
That hasn't happened.
We just assumed that would be happening. I'm watching it from the outside.
So think about it, though. I mean, from the House's perspective, they have to have bipartisan bills where you evenly split between Republicans and Democrats. You have to have those bills. But Leader Murphy thinks that she can take those same bills that are going to have some Republicans, some Democrats over in the House and pass them with full Democrat support over in the Senate without any Republican support. So she has no interest in coming to us on any of those issues.
Is she in La La Land? I mean, she floated this idea earlier, like on the illegal healthcare for illegal immigrants, and said, "Well, we'll have that bill go separately." Well, that's absurd. That's not a deal then. I mean, the deal means you vote for my stuff, I vote for your stuff, we agree together. Yep. If everything's going separate, then everything's going to fail. I mean, does she just stalling with that comment? I mean, I thought that was really, I don't know who was going to buy that. Maybe some people in the public would if they don't understand, but it's absurd.
It is. So we're going to see. I mean, we got to be patient, see how this thing works out. But Leader Dameth, she's doing, or I should say Speaker Dameth, is doing just a wonderful job. She's kind of being teamed up by the governor and Leader Hortman and Leader Murphy in those meetings. I'm there, but we're the only true minority caucus. So we're able to come in and back her up when it's necessary, when we can do that, kind of run some interference with the governor when he gets upset during the meetings. But now I've been asked not to be part of those meetings.
Really?
Because if they're not asking for my votes, and I'm not going to be signing off on an agreement that they're not asking for Senate Republican votes on, then what are we doing in that meeting other than being, looking like we tacitly approve the deal at the end of the day?
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I'm comfortable not being there. I'd like to be in the meeting, but if it's just for giving the Democrats cover that, well, Mark Johnson was sitting in the meeting, so then the Senate Republicans approve it. We don't. And that's why we're being very clear that we're not signing things.
Well, right. You didn't sign that original deal. So is it a number of things or just being allowed on the outside or?
Well, so we weren't asked to, give votes for it. We weren't asked. The input that we had was, more or less ignored from that because, look, we can get this through without having to compromise. We don't have to give you anything. So, look, I'm not going to sign a deal. If you're not going to take my ideas, then this isn't a deal. This is you guys dictating to us what you want to do.
What's your sense of Walz? You've been through a number of these negotiation processes. Is he less engaged? From the outside, it looks like he's not nearly as engaged as he usually is. He's doing all these national speeches. Yeah. He's really worried about what people think of him nationally. Is he in the game on this? Is he leading? I think a governor could actually lead at this moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So he is bringing people in. So I will say, all four of us leaders were in the conference room, but you sit there, he talks a good game, but then he'll go out and he'll blast Republicans as being neo-Nazis or, doing the things that he has done. You had clips on last week of him at the law school graduation, absolutely just destroying Republicans, both at the federal level and then I think making inferences to the Republicans at the state level as well, too. So how do you build trust with a guy when you know that he's going to go out there and just blast you like that? And so there's very little trust in that room on what's going to happen next. But it's so disappointing to see. There's no statesmanship. It's just pure politics and power politics.
So given the makeup of the legislature right now, is there any reason conservatives should have some hope for good policy coming out of this session, or maybe the next session even?
Here's what I will say. So Speaker Dameth is doing a great job, just a phenomenal job of really trying to hold the line on what is going on right now. It's going to be very difficult to pass, reforms and new bills. We've seen attempts at that this year, even bipartisan attempts at reforming a new policy. But you just see the hard left blocking that over and over again. The governor doing the same thing. So what she is able to do is, hey, we're going to hold the line on taxes. We're going to hold the line on mandates. We're not going to increase the burdens on Minnesotans and the communities that we're part of. And so we're not going to see a lot of reform until we get majorities in the House and the Senate. Then big deal is going to be finding that governor candidate too, in the upcoming year, when we can really transform the state. When you've got a state that's 101 Democrats and 100 Republicans, I mean, we are not a blue state. We are somewhere in between red and blue, and we got to figure out how to make some wins here. Otherwise, we're going to lose this state.
We're a red state with blue cities.
Well, there you go. Look at the map.
So that's what the map would say. Just any smaller bills come through that you see that you can say, at least in your district, you can say, hey, we got something done. Specifically that Inspector General office, which we thought was a pretty good idea here. You had Senator Cruan, who's been on our podcast before. He talked about it when he was here. It's a bipartisan bill, and the House Democrats said no. Shouldn't that even get done?
Yeah, I would think that would be one of those opportunities we could get it done. But you saw, like you talked about, the House shutting it down. Well, it's not right. It's not the right time for this bill.
They became fiscal conservatives all of a sudden. Like, we can't afford it.
After you lose, $650 million, like all of a sudden you start checking your piggy bank.
$9 million a year. How are we going to afford it?
The hypocrisy is just phenomenal.
It just hurts.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Some of those smaller bills we'll probably see. There's some omnibus bills like in agriculture and judiciary, things like that are done and will be some have been passed out. But the big ones like education and energy and transportation even is really struggling in some areas there too, because there are some policy differences. So that's going to take some work on those bills, but eventually we'll probably come to agreement on some of those smaller bills like that.
Now, one of the most frustrating aspects, I think, of this legislative session as an outsider looking in has been watching Senator Nicole Mitchell, the Senate burglar, continue to vote on all of these bills. I mean, when do we get to kick her out? Is that going to happen anytime soon?
Look, I mean, one of the things that happened this year that, has been was tough for our caucus was to have a member get charged with felony criminal activity, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we decided to do as a caucus was to address it in a way that we have been trying to live out our messaging with Nicole Mitchell. So we went very quickly on saying, okay, we condemn the actions and we're going to ask for the resignation.
Sure.
And one of the things that we've been trying to do with the Democrats,
and you got it immediately.
And we did. And taking care of the funny thing that week was the Democrats had a tougher week than we did, I think. Because they had to make the distinction of like, well, our felon isn't as bad as your felon. And that doesn't go, even in the statement that the leader Murphy put out, it was funny. I mean, there was this long paragraph of trying to make this distinction and balance it and thread the needle and all that. And ours was simply like, you know what, this is wrong, what he did, and it's a felony level crime. He's done as a senator. And it was very simple, very succinct. I think one paper put it brutally cold and highly effective.
Yep.
And so it is something that we were able to get past very quickly.
Now
they have to sit on their heels and say, well, we need due process. We need all these different things. But the reality is there's a difference between legal due process and really political due process. What's right? What's ethical in the Minnesota State Senate? And so they're really having a tough time. And she sits right behind me.
And so she's continuing to vote on all these bills because they have the one vote margin. And she presumably will through the special session. And then she goes on trial. I mean, when does the court system finally kick in here?
Well, it could kick in as early as mid-June. But again, now if we have a special session,
right,
she might be able to use that same statute to bump this out several more months. Now she's been very emboldened in what she's doing. And now on the anniversary of when she broke into her stepmother's house, she's she's now starting to speak again. So before she was pretty quiet, a little bit humbled on it. But now she's up there giving us lectures on morality and all these different things that she does all the time.
Maybe she set a 1 year clock and figures that she gets.
So now
we
can
all
participate.
We've all forgotten.
It is. So I mean, just the whole irony, the what's going on there. But we've been working very hard on trying to figure out ways that we can put pressure on the Senate Democrats. They refuse to just step up and do the right thing. If they would have done that, look, early this year we gave them the perfect window. Do it, and there's going to be a special election. And we won't be in power at that time. Will be a tie, and we had a tie. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Let's do this.
Yep. And you've already replaced Senator Eichhorn with Senator Heitzman, so you've already moved on that side. So
right. And so to me, the lengths that they will go to hold on to the power. It just amazes me.
All right. Final question. Then, what do you think? You're going back to the Capitol for a meeting here. What? This week, next week, we're going to come up to July 1. It really does end. The money runs out. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to start talking about, a government shutdown at this point now, but I hope Democrats start getting serious. You have the governor who's going to be running out to South Carolina. He'll be down in California giving these keynote addresses to Democrats out there. He'll have to go to Congress in mid-June, I believe it is, like the 12th of June. To give testimony on the fraud of Minnesota.
Oh, boy.
So that should be an interesting
good
hearing.
stop the tape content coming.
Yes. Mark that down.
So, I mean, he's got this whole schedule planned out of what he wants to be doing. And then Senator, Murphy not coming to us. I don't know when they're going to get real about actually working on a budget. We could do this so quickly and do it in a bipartisan way that makes sense for Minnesotans. But they can't do it. They can't get there. And I think part of that just because a number of them are going to be running for a different office.
Oh, boy.
And they want to make sure that they're not losing their base. And so for them, they've got to stay pretty intransigent.
And you guys are unified? You're the House, the Senate Republican caucus?
I cannot tell you how proud I am of the Senate Republican caucus. Very unified, very goal-oriented on what we need to be doing to get to the 26th election and get the majority and get the gavels back. And doing that in a way that makes sense. It's not a highly partisan group. It's people that want good policy for the state. And so are very hungry for that. So they've been doing just a fantastic job.
That is so good to hear and so reassuring. Senator Mark Johnson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity and go Sioux.
Yes.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. Remember always to like, share, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications. We will see you next week.